On this excellent Friday, 12 p.m., we're all getting ready for the weekend. We're going to be hosting these sessions here at Eyewear Artwalk Live Updates every 2 weeks starting today. We'll be moving these sessions based on request from you guys to Thursdays. So, keep a lookout. And if you're watching us on YouTube or in Facebook Live, this is a great opportunity for you to get involved. We'll be dropping the links for the future. So the way that these live updates work is you can watch them from the live streams, or you can actually join live. These sessions going forward are going to be taking you through the virtual portions of the Eyewear Artwalk experience, which is hosted by Omniverse City. Little bit of a kind of catch up on what all these terms mean. Eyewear Artwalk is our event that we're hosting, launching in June 13th through 15th in Denver at the McNichols Civic Center. We've got over how many brands now exhibiting, Trevor?
We'll have 70 different individual brands represented.
Excellent. And welcome, Trevor. Thank you for joining me on this tour of the metaverse. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. And Trevor and I are going to talk a lot about the feedback we've been getting. I think between Trevor, myself, and our team, we're probably reaching anywhere between 200 to 300 eye care professionals, brands, local eye doctors and opticians, local community members every week. The amount of outreach and inbound inquiries that we're getting through our chat, through our social media channels, it's just been absolutely breathtaking. And as we meet as a team a couple times a week, we'll talk about what we're hearing and what we're seeing. It's starting to be very consistent across our entire team. And we're all working different angles of this market in Denver to give everyone an opportunity to be heard and share their voice. So Trevor and I are going to be talking a little bit about some of the feedback we're getting and some of the questions that we're getting, especially focused around our experience in general, but right now focused on the virtual experience that's going to kind of give everyone an opportunity to be involved in this event, whether they're going to be able to come physically to Denver or not. Trevor, do you want to kind of kick it off by telling me some of the feedback you're getting?
Absolutely. Some of the feedback we're receiving from these individual eye care professionals in not just Colorado, but Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Arizona, and other states, is that they're extremely excited about the fact that Eyewear Artwalk has chosen Denver for its inaugural location. A lot of these eye care businesses and professionals do not travel to major events. They're not going to the East Coast. They're not going to the West Coast. So the only way to get in front of them is to be there in front of them in their market. And the fact that we are officially bringing this to them, everyone is so excited. They're signing up for their tickets. They're purchasing their add-ons. It's definitely been an awesome amount of positive feedback that we're receiving. And we continue to receive the same type of feedback day in and day out.
Excellent. So just to walk everyone through, when we talk about the metaverse, I know you've probably heard this term. A lot of people think it's a Facebook thing. The metaverse is just a platform very similar to the internet. When you think about it, that's a place where you can connect with all sorts of websites and social media communities. The metaverse is just an evolution of that, if you will. So you can go into platforms like the Omniverse City, and you can create an avatar, which is, you can see I've already got my avatar. She's ready to go. She's got her glasses and her outfit and her Eyewear Artwalk gear, her shoes, and she is ready for having a great time at Eyewear Artwalk. We're going to be running these events every couple of weeks, and we'll be showing you how to create avatars. If you our sessions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help you create your avatar and get ready for this epic event. And we're just going to hope we don't have a shy Omniverse city. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to mute Trevor. If you could just, kind of tell everyone a little bit about the difference between the B2B and the direct-to-consumer section, and I'm going to get the Omniverse city live.
No problem. Very simply, Eyewear Artwalk boasts two sides of the coin, both a direct-to-consumer festival experience and a B2B eye care professional experience. The difference between the two is in the title. The festival is accessible to any consumer, mom, dad, friends of a friend of a friend, whoever. And the B2B side of things will be for eye care professionals to have those wholesale conversations and direct business conversations with brands that are participating. And the reason that we wanted to provide that separation, we all know, is that there's different conversations for a B2B audience versus the consumer audience. Very simply put, B2B individuals are consumers, but they just don't think like the everyday consumer. They think of in-depth questions that trade shows like Eyewear Artwalk can help answer by putting you in front of that brand. The reason we have included a festival experience is that the end result, the end individual who is engaging with eyewear or eye care is the everyday consumer. And we find that these everyday consumers do not know that there is an entire ecosystem of independent eyewear brands, for example, or solutions and treatments to dry eye, where there's an estimated 50 million Americans affected by this every year. So by including the consumer, we're able to express these educational benefits to them in a more Coachella-esque vibe, which allows for, information retention. But on the backside, the consumer is what drives the demand. If an ECP sees that a lot of consumers are engaging with an eyewear brand that they do not stock, this is real, in-person data feedback or insights that they can activate on to bring that into their store, to bring that brand to the local community because they know the community wants it. So very easy splits between the two sides. Both have very specific conversations that are being had, one on the consumer and one on the B2B side. But the end result, consumers drive business. So we need to engage the consumers and let them know who we are and what we stand for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trevor. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So you can see the Omniverse City main screen?
Yes, ma'am.
And just to kind of walk you guys through some of the troubleshooting tips that you, first of all, just to clarify, Omniverse City is hosted by complete cloud infrastructure powered by all sorts of technology. So when you go to your browser, which is typically going to be Chrome, and you go to the omniverse.city and you go to create your avatar and get in, sometimes you're going to get right in, and sometimes it's just going to give you a little bit of a challenge. So one of the steps you could take is clearing the cache on your browser. A second step that you can take is trying a different browser. So I ended up switching to Edge, and that got me in. It's not uncommon when you're dealing with technology like this. So if you guys do have challenges getting in, let us know. We're happy to help you. And those are just some easy steps that you can take. So I've created my avatar, and I am now in a custom area where we're going to be hosting our Eyewear Artwalk events in the future. Now, I'm not going to do this today because our team is going to run some test events before we open this up to everybody that wants to come and explore the metaverse with us. But in 2 Thursdays from today, when we host our next event, we're going to give you an opportunity to jump in with us, create your avatar, and explore Eyewear Artwalk and our convention center areas. So, Trevor, when it comes to the metaverse specifically, what are some of the questions you're hearing from people about this metaverse experience, or any comments that you're hearing?
I think the top comment that I'm hearing is that individuals are interested, they're excited about it, but they're confused by what this virtual element actually brings to them. So, if I'm thinking from a brand perspective, what's the benefit of me having a space within the Eyewear Artwalk virtual world?
That's a really good question. And let's start with the reason we created this platform in the first place. So, right now, I just teleported. Now, if any of you have ever been to a physical event before, you will know that getting from the experience, if this event even has such a thing, to the convention center is certainly not as fast as I just did. So, if you really were to count the amount of time you spent moving from attraction to attraction or waiting just to speak to somebody, you'd realize there's a lot of time you're wasting. I've managed events. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of events in my career. And I got to tell you, if I was to count the active time, meaning the time that I'm spending doing things versus the waiting time, I think that those numbers would be very unbalanced, leaning more towards the time that I spend waiting to meet with the right person or waiting to get into an experience or an event. I went to an event once. I waited 3 hours online just to get into something, and that's time that I could spend doing other things. So the great thing about this convention center is we built this in 2021, right on the tail end of the pandemic, when people were just starting to go back to events again, and they were starting to really feel the pain of physical events, because we all wanted to get back into the real world after the pandemic ended. But once we got back and enjoyed that IRL experience that we'd been craving, we started to remember some of the challenges that were still there waiting for us. The biggest one is you come to an event, you come to a booth, you see that there's an exhibitor that's there, and they're already engaged with someone else. Now you want to talk to them, but you can't, because you've got to wait politely for that person to finish, and you may walk away. Now there's two losses there. There's a loss for the brand because they saw you, they made eye contact with you, they nodded as if to say, I'll be right with you, but they can't, just disengage from the conversation they're in. If there's one person manning a booth, they can only have one conversation at a time. So what we designed are these AI-powered assistants, which you will see starting to take on a personality and even a face eventually. All of these attendants will be designed by our brands based on the participation level they have with our event. But as you see here, David Green, who will be participating virtually at Eyewear Artwalk. And David Green will have him on in coming events. David has been participating with My Vision Show and the Optical Metaverse for 3 years. He's in South Africa. He does not come to the US very often, even though he has a huge network of retailers in the United States. He has a very small optical sales team. So if you want to engage with David Green right now, you have a couple choices. You can go to Mito or Silmo, which is where he typically goes every year. You can hopefully catch him at some of the upcoming Vision Expos, which he will occasionally frequent, but due to the rising costs of travel and some of these exhibits it's cost prohibitive for a younger brand, not a younger brand, for a brand that is independent. It's going to make it easier for David to come and meet with everyone around the country and really spend his time and his resources meeting with you face to face and giving you the things that you need to succeed, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands of dollars it can cost traveling the world. Just try to make that connection. And it is very, very, very likely that a brand like David Green would be physically at an event at the same time that their ideal customer is there, yet they just don't connect. So to answer your question, Trevor, I think the lowest hanging fruit with the metaverse is faster, easier, better connections, and new opportunities that just can't happen any other way. I'd love to let you kind of break that down a little bit.
Thank you for that. I think it definitely provides a little bit of clarity, but I see you walking around now and you're looking at engaging with these booths, and we were just talking about benefits. So if, for example, David Green is speaking with somebody in person, what's the next steps? You know, I can't speak to you, but you're in the Omniverse. You know, what do you do? Do you fill out a form? Are you placing an order right then and there? How does it all kind of work together?
That's a really, really good question. And I'm actually in front of the perfect booth. So if you really think back, I'm going to answer your question directly, but I just want to give you a little bit of a context in what I'm about to say. If you really think back to every brand and what their activation and conversion journey has looked like at their physical events, it evolves. Maybe the first year they go, they showcase their product, they assume the rep is going to take their pad, take orders and notes, and then they realize we're losing a lot of people. Then maybe they put some banners with some QR codes. So if somebody is busy, the person attending can just scan the QR code and fill out a form and request information. We're starting to see brands get more creative in using technology here. When brands come into the metaverse, it's almost as if they're trying to connect the dots between what they do in a real event setting and what they could do here in the metaverse. And what our team does is we work with them to say, look, it's very simple. Do you want to immediately connect with these brands? Meaning they can go in, request a call, they can even request to connect with you in these, what we call live stream booths that every one of our brands gets so that you can instantly connect with that vendor if they're available. The challenge with that is, as much as we enjoy the idea of being instant, it isn't always feasible. So we will work with every one of our brands to make sure that they can design the level of access that they would like to provide to the visitors to their specific booth based on their ability. So for instance, with ULens, they had a very specific product that they wanted to promote. It's this new performance vision kit. So they created this form, to your point, Trevor, simple, easy. I come in, I learn about this promotion, I indicate which one I'm interested in, I give you my information, done. HuLens immediately in real time gets my information. I could literally still be in the metaverse and get a text or a call from the team that says, hey, if you're still there, wait 1 minute, I'll be right with you. And they could just teleport right to where you are. And you would literally be standing here speaking with the team, assuming they're not there. Now, one step further, we're going to be hosting live exhibit time in this convention center during Eyewear Artwalk, which means it is very likely that if you stepped up to this booth, there would be a live person manning it with their avatar. Talk to me a little bit about, did that answer your question, Trevor?
It does. Thanks for that. Diving in a little bit more though, you were saying, thank you for sharing HuLens. They're able to get the information, but what's the data flow here? What am I able to track as a brand sponsoring a virtual booth, let's say? What's the data I can receive? And do I receive that data?
That's just such an incredible question. And there's so many layers to that. The team here at Eyewear Artwalk, and you know this because you work with me on this every day. By the time we hit Denver, I'm sure we'll be tracking several thousand hours as a team of the amount of time and energy and tenacity and grit that we've put into this. And we will have collected, coming into this event and leading up to the event, over 45,000 active email subscribers, metaverse participants, attendees to our event. There's a giant list. What you get access to as a brand is contingent upon your level. So everybody will get a list of the eye care professionals that have shown an interest in your brand. Now, typically showing an interest means I went to your booth and I filled out a form. But we've actually made it even more, we wanted to create more opportunities than that. Because if you think about a funnel, first getting someone to an event, that's huge. If an ECP, an eye care professional, shows up at an event, they're there for a reason. They're there to learn, they're there to buy, they're there to support their local community by showing up and seeing what's going on there, but they're very, very, very engaged. So we definitely want you to know if this person comes into your booth. And so even if they don't fill out a form, you'll be notified, Susie visited your booth. So you could send Susie a message and say, hey, thank you for visiting us. Would you like to meet us virtually or would you like to meet us physically? And those will be decisions that you and that individual can make based on what you want and what they want. So 100% of our brands will get all of the visitors from their booth before, during, and after the Eyewear Artwalk event. And that's regarding the virtual event. They'll also get a list of all of the people who visited them physically, because every brand is going to have a QR code and the ECP can check in. So, if they're not, and there's going to be rewards that we'll be giving to encourage them to do that. So you'll be able to get an idea of who's checking me out, who's interested in me, and then you as a brand can do your own follow-up accordingly. I think that piece alone is a big missing component, because if you think about it, it's one or the other. And I could say this from experience because I've participated in a lot of brands as a sales associate before, and even as a coordinator of these events. And when you're working an event like this, whether you're the owner of the company or you're somebody managing that event, you have a huge responsibility. You're talking about a lot of money that you need to generate at these events in a very short amount of time. And you want to do it without seeming, you want people to have a good time. You don't want them to feel pressured, but you also do have a job to do. So there's delicate balance here. So knowing who is genuinely interested in your brand, which is a very small set of the attendees that we're talking about here, it's super important, because those are the people who want to hear from you. They'll be impressed. If you follow up with them and say, hey, I saw you were at our booth. Did you have any questions? That's the ultimate customer service. That's what we all want. We're like, oh man, I forgot about that. And everyone was busy. I meant to go back and I forgot about it. Thank you. Thank you for texting me. Thank you for calling me. I think that right there is the lowest hanging fruit. And then there's other huge data points that we can get. And there's data journeys that we can design with our brands where they can say, look, I know that my sale, my order, my company, it's not a one-touch sale. People don't come here, discover my product, and place a 50-piece order first time. They need to learn about my brand, learn about my story, learn about the creator, learn about how it's made. They need to actually get in there and remove some screws from the frame and see how easy it is to put back together. Really talk to some other opticians. What do they think about it? Our industry is very methodical when it comes to making decisions. They're very conscientious about the brands that they bring in, and they put their name behind when they put it on their board in their optical shop. So allowing our brands to actually create that journey and say, hey, and I'll give you an example here. I'll go back to David or actually Kazoku Lynette's perfect example. Now I can either go to the Kazoku Lynette's exhibit, or I could take the Kazoku Lynette's experience. Michael has opted into this, so I could tell you some of the elements now of that experience. It's going to be learning about the fashion show behind the scenes, watching how they did the casting, seeing the looks of glee on the faces of the people that sat on front row during the fashion show and are just celebrating that Michael now is not only the most amazing designer of this luxury eyewear with this unique aesthetic. I'll show you some of the frames so you can get a flavor of some of his best sellers. You know, this is what we did here with this is obviously we don't want to overwhelm people with 100 different frames. So we said, look, show people a sample. What is the kind of best of the aesthetic you have? And, you know, Michael and his team are in the process of updating this now and making this relevant for Eyewear Artwalk, because what I understand is he's actually made some pieces exclusively to launch at Eyewear Artwalk and to supplement and support the fashion line that he's going to be showcasing here as well. So as you hear me talk on and on and on, it's a lot of information here. It's new information. It's exciting information. It's definitely not information you're going to get walking around a show floor. You just don't have that amount of time. So coming to a booth like this and taking the Kazoku Lunettes experience and getting Michael to explain why he used these designs, why he has this brow bar, why Kazoku means family, why he fits his frames on 4 to 5 different humans, and they could be from different ethnicities, different cultures, different head sizes, different, you know, weight classes, because he wants to make sure that his frame fits perfectly on every face. You might not know that if you're breezing past the booth and you don't get to talk to him, but our experiences, not exhibits, experiences are designed so you can really take a deep dive into these brands, but you could do it on your own time. I know I gave you a lot of information there, Trevor, but does that help?
It does, and you know that's fantastic. I do want to break some of those points down a little bit, but one of the things that you said I think is most interesting to me as a marketer, as a data analysis, just you know as a business individual, there's key pieces of data that I miss with in-person events. And one of them you said is basically booth attendees. If I can't get to you to speak to you at a live event, I'd more than likely have lost that entire sale. But what you're telling me is that I could have, you know, a QR code in the booth that says, while you're waiting, experience, you know, whatever we've built in this virtual world with Eyewear Artwalk, and I still then can capture their data? Question mark?
Absolutely. And data is something that's very tricky. It's very important for brands to have data, but it's also important for the user to feel like they've got their own privacy and security, and, you know, they're in control of who, what, when, where. Now, we all know when we go to a convention that the whole point is for us to demonstrate our interest. So whether we're available at that moment or not, and we expect the brands to follow up with us. So if somebody walks into a booth and scans a QR code, they're going to expect you to call them back. That's not going to be creepy. But if they're just, you know, breezing by your booth and they don't really show interest, and, you know, we could technically capture those as visits as well, but we don't, because we want the user to be somewhat in control of what's going on. However, you could, and this is something we're going to be offering to all of our brands, send an email to our entire network of everyone that's on our list, 45,000 and growing. And you can tell me what the number is now, Trevor, because you manage that. By the way, where are we at now with our audience count from our, you know, email list, our social media, the people that we actually can actively touch? What would you say that active touch list is at this moment?
We actively engage with about 58,000 unique individuals across the US so far and counting.
Perfect. Okay.
And those individuals, I want to preface, are eye care professionals. That does not include the general public. If you're looking at general public, you know, add another 30 to 40,000 on top of that. But for the purpose of this conversation, it's focused and tailored to the brands. So let's say they want to talk to ECPs. Yeah, we're looking at 58,000 strong and growing, honestly, 10 to 15% week over week.
And I think you bring up a very important point. I think people in the beginning, especially when we started this event, were super confused when we in 2024 took a leap of faith and started giving the general consumer a voice, an opportunity to participate and learn about the industry. There were a lot of people that were very upset about that. But I got to tell you what's really funny, who's not upset about that. I thought we were going to get much more pushback from the local dealers in these markets, but they seemed very excited because they know the value of having an educated buyer. It's like, how much time do I have to spend explaining like why this is a better quality and what to look for and the craftsmanship and the customer service and the value of all these different things and the accuracy. It's a lot of time that they're going to have to spend explaining that just so they could do their jobs properly. So they got it immediately. They're like, this is great. You're going to educate our consumer, show them why it's important to shop locally. I love that. But our focus has not been on the consumer at all because we don't need it to be on the consumer. They're coming anyway. This is the first time in history they've been allowed. We're not trying to drive consumers to this event. They're just simply coming. Would you agree with that? Because you're the one running the marketing.
I would agree with that in the beginning. I think now, of course, because we're seeing the consumer engage so much and we're seeing the acceptance both from a brand supporter and from the ECPs, we're starting to do more community outreach. And we have some community initiatives, especially lined up for Denver in the upcoming weeks. But it's amazing how, one eye care professional in Denver learns about this and the fact that they may tell two or three of their patients just kind of throughout the day in conversation, that spreads. I mean, we're getting engagement with people that are not on our target list. They're not on our targeted audiences. We've never engaged with them before, but yet they're finding us and they want to be involved in this.
Well, you talk about data. Let's talk about data cleanliness. We have lists from, every major clearinghouse in the industry. We've been growing them over the years. And I have my own personal list of 27 years that I've been growing and maintaining. And when we first started cleaning up this list to make sure that our email counts and everything were real, accurate people, we found a lot of people that weren't even on any list. And, a lot of them are these mobile opticians that are popping up doing this virtual styling. They're a perfect new audience for independent brands. And we're finding there's a lot of boutique, sunglass shops that are looking to start opening up their shops to sell, luxury sunglasses with just a regular plano polarized lens, like kind of like this whole, they're kind of competing with like the sunglass huts in the mall, but they're opening up these storefronts in these, strip malls, and they're seeing a lot of success, especially in markets like Denver that really do invest in quality sunglasses because they have the sun's out a lot. A lot of them are very active. They're outdoors a lot. So it's we're learning a lot just from the Denver market in general about new segments of the market that are completely untouched. They're actually not even known about. And we can expect them to grow. We can expect if there's somebody out there driving around in a van, having a bougie lifestyle of styling people in their homes like celebrities with luxury eyewear and making a living, the word gets out about that job opportunity. You're going to see people going out looking for these vans, souping them out with these Airstreams and hitting the road to give that bougie celebrity, home delivery experience. That's the future, right? That's fun. That's exciting. That's giving all of us like a new opportunity as a supply chain.
Honestly, incredible to hear. I mean, I'm new to the industry, and those who join me on our Wednesday podcast know that I'm very new. So, I mean, I love to see how the industry is seeing the modern consumer and is starting to make that transition to cater to that modern consumer. And we're seeing that especially with those who are registering for the Denver event.
So, we could talk at length about some of these different components. And that's the reason we're doing these events. And again, we're going to start staging them every 2 weeks to give people a break to learn about it. We'll be repurposing the videos that we do because Trevor, thank you so much for joining me on this call. I feel like you've helped me to really hone in on the meat and potatoes of this. A lot of times I do these demos, I'll do it more like this is this and that is that. But your questions, which are kind of on behalf of the audience that you've been very closely connected to, it's really helped me to zero in on the points that people are wanting to hear about. But I think next time we do this in a couple of weeks, we're going to get a larger group of people in here having fun. I think we're going to really build that buzz coming into Denver and making this virtual portal, this digital twin of our Denver event thrive and really give all of us the opportunity to understand there's so many people out there that want to be involved that will come virtually if they can't come physically.
Completely agree. And I know, and thank you so much for inviting me, Charlene, and having me. I'm excited to see, what we go over in 2 weeks. I know that we're bringing in, all of our supporters. So everyone's going to be here with their avatars, kind of learning about it. Super excited to hear that. Next week, I also want us to we reveal one of our celebrity performances that will also be happening in Omniverse City and why that's important to Eyewear Artwalk and the consumers.
Well, and I think even better, what we can do is we can have a contest because we're going to be doing some free ticket giveaways. And maybe we can have people vote on, do you want to reveal who one of the celebrity acts is now, or do you want to hold that for next week or 2 weeks?
Let's hold that for 2 weeks. We have to make sure people come back for our show.
Okay, fine. Well, dun, dun, dun. See you in 2 weeks. But what I'm thinking is maybe it would be fun to let our audience vote on the eyewear that the avatars wear during the concert. So this way, if let's just say someone says, oh, I think that, artist should wear Kirk and Kirk, or that artist should wear Kazoku lunettes. We can work with those designers to choose a frame that they'd like to showcase on that artist. And then the artist's avatar could actually wear that eyewear. We can custom style our avatars with the eyewear from the brands that are participating in Eyewear Artwalk and let our audience vote. What do you think about that, Trevor?
I love that idea. Let's definitely get our audience involved, and let's get more of those who are excited about the in-person, excited about the digital as well.
Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap up and put you guys into context of where I am. So we were previously in the convention center. The convention center is token gated access, which means you can go in there no matter who you are, but you cannot go into our professional networking sessions, which are AI matchmaking sessions, unless you have a ticket, because your ticket is going to give you the access to those. They're like portals. Omniverse City is one of the most unique platforms in the world because there could literally be someone standing in this same store as I am right now, and I would not see them. We'll talk about that another time. It's more about privacy and security. But if I want people to see me, I can send them an invitation and they can join me. So you would literally just see people teleporting or materializing next to me in real life. It's the coolest thing ever. It never gets old, right? Even my 9-year-old is impressed. But this is an example of a store. And what's really cool about this is if you're an optical shop in Pennsylvania, you're a destination location. I know a couple of them, Philly. And a lot of your people, they lived there once and they moved away and they just love you. They'll call you on the phone and keep you on for hours talking about your glasses. And you could be in the front, selling. So we had a lot of requests from opticians to build remote optical shops that they could design to either look exactly like their existing shop or something modern and different. So this is just a template, but we can build anything, anything you want. And it's really, really just a cool opportunity. And the really great thing is, let's just say you're an eyewear brand and you want to build a flagship in the metaverse. You can design it, merchandise it exactly the way that you would love your stores to merchandise your product in their store, giving them some great ideas. And then you can lease the store out for trunk shows, for private parties, or you can even start building a row where some of your retailers can actually use those stores to sell their eyewear to their customers, or create like a street party. The opportunities are really endless. And as you can see, we have a direct integration with Planet VA. Shout out to the Planet VA team. They've been building technology for a lot of our software and our experiences for over 7 years now. Really proud of that partnership. About 3 years ago, before we had the metaverse and before we had Eyewear Artwalk, we had a lot of brands that needed exposure. So we built this program called Frames Library. And what's really great about Frames Library is it allows a brand like David Green to showcase their products, whether it be direct to the consumer or B2B. And since there's no price, the person can just indicate what they're interested in and then send the wish list on. So, what's really great is independent optical shops before Eyewear Artwalk can claim their free Eyewear Artwalk retailer kit, which includes, and this is absolutely at no charge to you, a listing on the Optical Near Me directory. Very important you do that. It's free. Go ahead and set it up before the event, or reach out to us at the eyewearartwalk.com through our chat, or you can go to opticalnearme.com and fill out a form to become a new retailer. We'll add you to the Denver list, or if you're in a surrounding state, no problem. You'll also get your own Frames Library app, which will be complimentary for 90 days after Denver. And that allows you to set up your own custom Frames Library with the brands that you have. So if you want to talk about going to Eyewear Artwalk in your Instagram and your Facebook and share your Frames Library link, which again looks exactly like this, super simple. You might say, look, I only carry David Green, or I only carry Kazoku Lunettes, and then you can shut off the other brands. So this way you're promoting those specific brands. And what's really cool is your customers can try those frames on virtually, and they can send a request, which will come directly to you as an optical shop. This is a lot of information. It's all new. We'll be going over it again and again to make you comfortable with it. Once it clicks, believe me, you will be happy that you spent the time to absorb and digest these brand new opportunities that are only going to give you better ways to connect to today's digital audiences. I'll let you kind of wrap on that note, Trevor. When we talk about digital audiences, tell me, as just somebody who's in the marketing space, how has the digital audience evolved?
Well, I think, with from the start of the internet, really, it's evolved very quickly over the past, I would say, 5 to 8 years than it has over the past, call it 30 years, or really however old the internet is. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was 93? So 30 years. Wow, I got that right. Anyways.
Which really isn't that long when you think about it.
It really isn't. And 30 years ago was everyone can access stuff. A few years later, cookies became a thing, and you could start tracking the amount of views, people engaging with an ad, things like that. You fast forward to where we are now, you're looking at entire generations of new consumers who are 100% digitally focused. And the way that they're engaging with digital is not just going to Amazon to buy a product, but coming into these new 3D virtual worlds, like your metaverse, Omniverse City, and engaging with brands digitally and connecting with sales agents digitally or with artificial intelligence. And this is a generation that trusts technology in order to be able to do that. So we're seeing that digital audience go from, myself who lives in X place in the US, haha, y'all thought you were going to get it, and placed an order on Amazon, to now I can track, from your avatar, every footstep that you take within this virtual world. And we're okay with that because of new data security and privacy abilities that we have. But this is now a time and an opportunity for brands who may have been late to the digital renaissance before to not be late this time.
I'm totally stealing that forever and ever. That's going on. I could not figure out what to put on my headline of the Omniverse City site, but I think it's going to be join the digital renaissance. Totally stealing that. My avatar is even getting Renaissance gear. I'm going for it. Medieval times it is. So I am, and actually, here's really interesting, Trevor. You haven't met Jay before. Jay is a godsend for the Omniverse City. He's been building the new city. And Jay, are you able to come off mute?
Think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Jay, I want to let you introduce yourself. And then on the heels of that, I want you to talk about this new opportunity of in-game advertising and how Omniverse City is going to evolve to be a facilitator of modern in-game advertising for these brands that are kind of new to these virtual worlds. Thank you for joining us today.
No problem. I just had to walk outside real quick. I'm gonna get me some sun while we do this. But oh, it's so nice out here. But yeah, I'm actually in the Omniverse Unreal Engine project right now. But I would say don't use the word metaverse. Call it the Unreal Renaissance instead. That I don't know. It's just a personal thing, I kind of like the ring of that. It rolls off the tongue much better.
The Unreal Renaissance. Okay.
Mm.
And, what are some of the platforms that you've worked within that have leveraged in-game advertising to, rake in millions of dollars? What are some of the trends that you're seeing in in-game advertising?
Well, the main trend was it's the one that still holds true to this day is the free to play gaming platforms for the mobile market's a really good example of this. All these amazing free to play games, just so you could watch. Now, if they're tastefully placed, but inbuilt advertising systems like the Unity advertising system is completely native with Unreal Engine now. So you could create your own space, your own what's it called, game or whatever you want to make, and you could put your ads in there. And actually, your space will make you money off of your user base.
Because people will pay advertising if you have a lot of users coming in.
Not just that, but for say the Unity advertising system, for instance, the same one they use on the mobile phones and stuff like that.
Mhm.
You could have, say, you build a city, for instance. You could have those ads playing on the billboards around a building, and just from the players being in there and their cameras pointing in that general direction, you're now getting paid, kind of like how YouTube monetization works.
Got it. Okay. Now, would you compare that to like banner ads from Google, or is that different?
It's exactly like banner ads. Think of banner ads, except you get to place your banners where you want.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So
basically that.
perfect. So to kind of illustrate what Jay is saying, most of you know when you go to place an ad through Google, that's like a picture ad and not like a text-based ad. They show you where, like the real estate, where it can go. And it needs to be a specific format to fit in that space. And then you got to bid on the certain times that you're going to be where you're going to be. And it's super, 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 super competitive, super expensive. And more importantly, you don't always get all your own data with that. You don't always know if the people that are engaging with your ad that you're paying for those clicks are real people or are bots. There's been a lot of evidence that shows there's actually apps designed to prohibit and detect bots. That's how bad bot traffic is to these pay-per-click advertising systems. So,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's it's funny you should mention that. When we opened up our cannabis company, we're so dirty. Oh my god! So we started running Google ads, but we also programmed the bot to find our competitors' Google ads and just start clicking the hell out of them, so we would burn through their advertising budget to get them off the internet early in the month.
so it's safe to say that there are ways that we can create advertising opportunities in Omniverse City where you know there's an active player. These are active players. There's no bots that are going to be walking around Omniverse City engaging with these ads. So if you have 1,000 impressions, you know it's 1,000 real people.
Yeah,
Would you say
and we're
that's
going to
right?
also implement stuff like AFK checkers. Also, like it's a system that checks if somebody's away from their keyboard, and after a couple of minutes, logs them out, and stuff like that.
Yep. That's so important. And when it comes to building anything in the metaverse or anything on an Unreal platform, we'll say that. And the reason Unreal is so important is when you think metaverse, you think Roblox, you think, people with torsos and no legs, and the spaces that we're building are very high quality, very high fidelity. And if you're a luxury brand like a lot of the brands we're working with, you will be able to really showcase your product in a way that is complementary. Jay, in these last few minutes we have here, do you want to talk about some of the luxury brand activations that you've seen in these Unreal spaces or even anywhere else in the metaverse? You're muted. Okay, we might have lost Jay, but if you're following, you'll see LVMH has done a lot of activations
Actually,
early. Oh, sure, go ahead.
sorry about that. I was just talking my butt off with the microphone off. Anywho, yeah, no, I was gonna say that it's Roblox and Fortnite for the most part that they're flocking to, which it's a marketing thing. Like they talk to their marketing teams, they know which markets they want to go after and stuff. So say like Louis Vuitton, for instance, when they did their Roblox space, if they would have had a better Southeast Asian market, they would have went to say Second Life or that other platform instead. They're just following the markets. But Roblox, it's a very weird thing. They're getting into Roblox because of the child user base. It's almost like somebody went into our country's child protection laws and basically removed everything that was put in place during the 80s action toy epidemic that took over children's television. Because of shows like He-Man, G.I. Joe basically being created just to sell toys, we put in a bunch of children's protection acts and stuff to stop that kind of stuff from being just directly advertised into a child's brain through the television. Roblox somehow was able to skirt around that, and a couple of these other brands are picking up that they can't directly advertise to children, but Roblox is a direct advertising network right into their brains, and somehow gets around our child protection laws, which is completely and utterly insane. But that's the main push. I mean, we could sit here and talk about amazing technology and all this stuff, but if you want to get down to the real meat and gritty and how corporations think and stuff like that, you just have to offer that direct line into the consumer's brain. It's sad that on Roblox it's children, but then again, I stepped away from Roblox for that very reason.
I think you bring up a really good point, because what you're talking about is changing perception, and and sometimes that could be a bad thing, but sometimes it could be a good thing. And what we're trying to do with Eyewear Artwalk, with our entire ecosystem we have here in general,
Hey,
is to change the perception that these large
get you over you.
licensed brands that are very top of mind for all the reasons you just mentioned, they have the ability to be omnipresent. I mean, we all know, we're like, gosh, this brand follows me everywhere. This
Mm-hmm.
omnipresent ability of these very large brands with these large budgets is almost to a point where it's intrusive. So it does make it challenging for brands that don't have those resources or the know-how to do that. It really puts them at a disadvantage. And when
Yeah,
you give
yeah.
an entire industry, like our industry, the optical luxury eyewear industry specifically, which is a small sector of the whole industry, but you give that industry these tools to communicate as one voice, it is pretty powerful. Have you ever seen in all you've spent a lot of time, more time in these virtual worlds than anyone I know. Have you ever seen an entire industry embrace these worlds together as a community?
A while back on Second Life, there was a big push I think it was about a decade ago, when the news finally got hold of Second Life and put it out there in the world. Brands did start pushing into it, but it was, oh my God, it was the Wild West back in those days. I mean, you had everything from like terrorist training centers and everything like that on these platforms at that time. So there was no monetization, full Wild West mentality. So that kind of scared them away, but they're starting to come back in now that they've cleaned themselves up quite a bit, like what is it, Roblox. For all their faults, I have to give it to them. They're the ones that really started saying, hey, these are the rules for monetizing one of these virtual worlds, and thankfully they don't practice what they preach, but they did set down, okay, you need to do this certain amount of things to keep it safe so that the brands will come, because there, oh my God, if they would have picked up on Second Life a decade ago, we would be 20, 30 years ahead of where we are right now. It was just way too early. And as somebody who used to build on Second Life in those days, when I started seeing this whole transition to the digital world, yeah, it's the same old trick, but I was like, finally, like it's finally going to happen, because there was a lot of money to be made on Second Life back in the days. Good Lord, I was pulling in almost 200,000 Linden dollars a month or something like that. It's just getting your money out of their ecosystem was just next to impossible in those days. Like they put up so many hoops and hurdles and stuff like that to get your money out of the system. So it just wasn't feasible. But nowadays, Roblox is actually, I heard, getting ready to start paying in US dollar rather than Robux. So they're thankfully fixing that issue, because they used to take almost 70 to 90% of whatever you made within all those transitions. So that kind of made Roblox unappealing. But I know as a brand, you can now go to Roblox and set it up to where you could just deal in USD now. Because a
Well,
lot of
and
these brands,
I
yeah,
think
they're
you
looking
bring up a
for
really good
USD.
point because if a brand creates a game, a branded game in Fortnite, and if they have a large network of followers, not only are they getting the advertising that that game provides, that kind of brand awareness, but you can actually monetize those games to these platforms now. So they actually pay you for users to play these games. So thank you for bringing that's a really good point, actually.
Oh yeah, it's like the game Fortnite. I believe it's about $10,000 to $20,000. No, about $1,000 for every 10 to 20,000 players. And I mean, my games, for instance, rack up about 50 to 300,000 players a month. So they're pretty nice checks. There's some, God, I was actually doing my own research and I found out a lot of even though you have to be quote unquote 18 to be a part of the Fortnite creative program, I found that about 80% of the people participating are actually children between the ages of 11 and 14, just using their parents' banking information and stuff like that, either lying to their parents about it or their parents are just totally cool with exploiting their kids. But there are some of these kids making $85,000, $150,000, $1 million, not a year, per month
Oh my
on Fortnite.
goodness.
Yes, per month.
Well, and Jay, I really appreciate you coming on to this, impromptu and in the future I do plan on having you with a little bit more of a planned um, you know, talking point. But if you were to say one thing to brands that are very, very new to these virtual worlds and they're seeing us kind of offering this as an option of a digital twin of our physical event in Denver, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them if they're just beginning their journey of considering how this can play into their overall brand strategy?
That's an easy one. Don't ride the hype, ride the return on your investment. There are so many quote unquote metaverse platforms out there that are just dead end for brands. Like, I don't want to bring up no names, but there's a couple of them out there in the spatial computing world, and all that stuff that it's all about hyping their brand as a platform. They can care less about you or the success of your brand, even though that creates that circular in-game ecosystem that every single, because at the end of the day, these are just multiplayer online games. That's all they are. We can label them whatever they want. They're just massive multiplayer online games. Let's wipe away all these new catchphrases that they made so they can milk the VCs with. But make sure you get your return on your investment, because this has been around for decades, and it only works if you follow those rules that we instilled decades ago. Yeah, it's got a fancy new name and all that, but it's still the same thing, you know? So don't go to a platform that, for instance, if you are a t-shirt company, don't go to a platform that doesn't have the ability to sell t-shirts on your avatars. You're wasting your time, you know? We're basically putting in everything into Omniverse that every client ever asked us for, but none of the platforms we ever worked on provided for them. And they're worse than that. You can't even suggest it to them because they just brush you off. So because it's not building their brand, you're building your client's brand instead. So try to avoid those platforms like the plague. If they don't have simple things like an in-game currency, in-game marketplace, SDKs for creation of assets to sell to consumers, things like that. Just avoid them, because it's the same old repackaged Me Too, I live off of VC investing metaverse platform.
Well, Jay, I got to tell you, your insights are incredible. Anybody who follows you knows that you know your stuff. You've worked with some of the biggest brands out there, and they come to you for guidance. You know, brands like, do you mind if I say like Disney? What are some of the big brands that you've worked with that you've kind of consulted with them in their own metaverse strategy?
Made Disney fire their whole metaverse department. I told them it was a fad, that it wasn't worth their time and effort to take all your game company people and put them back on games, because that's going to survive. Metaverse won't. I'm actually surprised the whole thing still. Honestly, it's not. We are inside of a very, 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 very small echo chamber that uses that term metaverse still. Like brands like Walmart, for instance, you're not going to hear Walmart saying they're building a metaverse. You're going to hear them saying they're building a Roblox game. We're building a Fortnite game. Nike, you're not going to hear that. You're not going to hear any of these major brands ever use the word metaverse ever again, because it's got that dead mall associated to it. Like nobody outside of the very few people on LinkedIn even talk about it anymore. I've actually created a new LinkedIn account, and I don't use the word, and it's nowhere in the echo chamber. But I took another LinkedIn account and I just hashtagged it 2 or 3 times, and it's the same 10, 20 people that I see on my LinkedIn account. So LinkedIn has the same problem that Twitter has, where it's very quick to push you into a very small echo chamber.
Well, we will definitely be expanding this conversation, bringing more people in so we could explore the metaverse together. Trevor, thank you so much for joining me today and helping me do the walkthrough of how to get into the Omniverse City and get ready for Eyewear Artwalk. And Jay, thank you for everything you're doing to make Omniverse City more accessible and to give people what they really need so they can have an unreal experience worth having.
And I got hoverboards working last night, so that's another plus. So, what was it I was going to say? Oh yeah, I don't want to be a big downer or anything, like just smack talking metaverse. I just know that we're capable of better than that, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And I know a lot of people might be confused, listen to this and saying, wait a second, they're building the Omniverse City, which is technically a metaverse. So why are they saying, I think what Jay is saying is when people use some of these terms, they are trying to live up to a standard that nobody wants anymore. Building a beautiful space that you can call a metaverse can sometimes give you the ability to go out and raise money to build it bigger, but you don't really find these people raising that money and building it bigger. I don't know what they do with that money, but they certainly are building out their technology.
Go into Roblox and ask anybody in there what they think of the metaverse. Now, keep in mind that everybody on LinkedIn is pushing Roblox and all that as the new metaverse. But if you go into Roblox and you ask about the metaverse, they laugh at you.
So we'll be adjusting our technology and our verbiage as time goes on. But it's important to know the Omniverse. The reason we called it Omniverse City in the beginning was, and this is before metaverse was even a term that people were moving away from. We had a feeling that was going to become an overused term anyway. And the Omniverse City is so much more than just a virtual world. It's a marketplace. It's a community engine. And if you're out there listening and you're wanting to be a part of it, we look forward to seeing you soon. All right, I'm going to wrap up. You guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
All right. Oh, and it's also the term that NVIDIA is using for their multiplayer online package tools, like MetaHuman is part of Omniverse. That's their plugin package.
Absolutely. And just to clarify that point before we wrap up, so Omniverse is an ecosystem within NVIDIA Omniverse, and Omniverse City is a trademarked metaverse or online virtual world experience. It's funny, when we designed our trademark, we didn't even use the word metaverse. It wasn't even an option. So you're right, it was virtual worlds with 3D activations that allow you to demonstrate your brand, your community in these virtual worlds. So to be continued, and we're